Welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of Crypto Casual, where we like to talk about cryptocurrencies and BTC casually, but we do also with an esoteric twist. We talked about esoteric, what that means in the last video, so go back to the first video and you can get an explanation of what that is. In this episode, we're just going to talk about keep it more casual for beginners. What I find out a lot of times, I've been teaching this stuff for about 4 years in all aspects of cryptocurrencies. But the more and more people who are onboarding or on-ramping or want to know how to get out of the overinflated system, the fiat currencies, and come over to, and put their money into something more secure, they are hesitant because they don't have enough education. So this channel is basically just to keep it simple and help those guys just on-ramping, just to keep it simple and understand or be able to have enough information to make a wise decision. Keep their money in a system that's losing 30-35% per year, or put it into a system that's consistently increased 200% for the last 10 years. And so that's just not enough information for the average person. So I got my notes over here. I'm going to be glancing at them every now and then. So let's just start out simply. Let's just say you make $20,000 a year and you're pretty much maxed with everything and all your bills equal $20,000 a year. Well, as they print more money, that devalues the money that's already in the system. And yes, I'm using money right now, but it's really currency. Currency that we're spending is just backed in faith. It has no backing. It's not backed by gold. It was taken off the gold standard in Nixon's reign during 1971. So that way, because normally you were only allowed to print as much money as there was gold that we held. Well, we were printing more money than gold, and then everyone started trading in their money for the gold, and then the government says, "Hey, we're going to take it off the dollar standard, or off the gold standard." And so basically, that gave the Federal Reserve, which is not a government agency, permission to just to print as much money as they want without backing it by anything. And so what this does is create inflation. So the more look at inflation as a balloon. So every dollar they print goes into this balloon, and every balloon has its breaking point. And so the more money they print, the more it goes into the balloon, the more the balloon gets inflated, if that makes sense. And then inflation is taking buying power away from you, meaning that $100 50 years ago won't buy the same. Well, let's look at it as a shopping cart. Some of y'all may have seen this video where it shows a shopping cart. 100 years ago, what $100 would buy you? It'd buy you 2 shopping cartfuls. Well, $100 today barely buys you only about 5 or 6 items, depending on what you're buying, but it won't fill up even one shopping cart. So the nominal fee, or the nominal value of that $100 is still $100, but what it can purchase is not the same. It's less than what it was. So they have printed trillions of dollars this last year, and the year before, or in 2020 and this year, they're just continuing printing more, which is inflating that balloon, and all balloons will pop eventually. And so what's going to happen is that the value of your purchasing power is losing 30%. And yes, some say it's higher when they're adding in other costs such as gas and food, which they don't put into the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. And the Consumer Price Index is what they use to value what the price of things are. Simply speaking. And again, we can go into details into this, but these videos are made for those who are just beginning to get into cryptocurrencies, or who are thinking about getting into cryptocurrencies and BTC. And we'll get into how BTC or Bitcoin is a store of value, a hedge against inflation, and a few other things which we'll get into. But for now, let's just keep on with the scenario that you make $20,000 a year. And your bills basically add up, and your expenses equal $20,000 a year. But the inflation of prices going up, the government can say, "Oh, inflation's not happening; it's still at 1% or 2%." But they're not. But the supply and demand of your goods and services that your $100 bill buys you is not able to buy the same amount of lumber as it did a year ago, right? A year ago, you were able to buy a lot of 2x4s. Now it buys not even half of that amount, because it went up 300-400%. So for every percentage goes up, that's another less of the value of the dollar that you were spending, if that makes sense. But let's say we'll just stick with 30%, that your dollar's losing 30% of its value every year. So even that dollar you have, or that $100 you have in your pocket, it's going to only buy you $70 next year, right? Because everything's going up in value. So if you made $20,000, you're spending $20,000, and the government is increasing everything and the Federal Reserve is increasing it by 30%, or depreciating it by 30%, then you're going to have to make $26,000 to still pay for that $20,000 worth of debt. Because 30% times 20,000 is 6,000. Take the 6,000 away from 20,000, and you end up with 14,000. So you got to make an additional $6,000 for the same for the same bills you're paying for the same goods and services, the gas, the food. You're going to need $4,000 more just to make up for that 30% depreciation in the dollar. Does that make sense? Again, please comment below. If it's not clear enough, I'll be more than happy to explain it or break it down into more detail. But the point I'm making is that the fiat money, called dollars, are losing value every year, 30%. Even if you have it in the bank, if you have $1,000 in the bank, by the end of this year, you will have lost $300, so you're only sitting with $700 in there, even with their minimal interest rate. So let's just go and find out why during times of inflation, people move their money, right, or their asset, or their currency into an asset that's going to be more stable, or what we call a hedge against inflation. Because again, when they print more money and it loses value, people take their fiat dollars and put it into something that's going to maintain value, such as gold, silver, Bitcoin now, and cryptocurrencies, as well as real estate, some real estate, cars, watches, things that will hold their value. If you put money into a Rolex, it's a rarity that Rolexes go down in value. So people move things over and hold it into those assets that normally don't go down, and if they do, it's not as much as what the dollar's going down. So hopefully that's making sense. So if you were making the 20,000, you now need to make 24,000, and if your boss is not going to give you a raise because they don't have enough money, then they're either going to fire you or ask you to take a pay cut so they can keep their business afloat, and that's called stagnation within your salaries and hourly wages. They will fire more people to save them money, and then make the people who are left to do the work of the people who were just fired. So either way, it's not a good all around. It is for the rich, or it is for people who understand finance, and we just move our stuff over into something that's going to hold value. And in the last 12 years, 10 years specifically, Bitcoin has gone up 200% every year for the last 10 years. It's the most outperforming asset class of bonds, stocks, gold, silver, real estate, anything. Nothing even comes close to it. And again, an average of 200. So you got to make the choice. Do you want to put your money into something that goes up 200% on average for the last 10 years, or something that's gone down in value over the last 100 years? And specifically the last year, it's gone down about 30-35%. So it's not a logical choice, or it should be just a logical choice, an educational decision that says, hey, I want to put my money over here where it's losing 30%, or I'm going to put it over here that's gaining 200% on average. Or something more consistently. Gold, I think in the last year, I think it's only gone up 0.1%. So you didn't lose anything and you didn't really gain anything. And now that's not to say gold in the future won't go up higher. That's another conversation for another time. But let's also talk about why Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin, because that's the main one I'm talking about, the hedge against inflation, store of value, if you will. Bitcoin is easier, quicker, more secure than the traditional systems. Most people in the world, out of we'll just round it up, 8 billion people in the world, 70% of those don't have access to a bank. Yes, sir, I've seen figures 60%, 70%, 80%, but there's a large amount of people who don't have access. Why? Because you need someone's permission to use their system, such as a bank account. You need to give them all your information, your ID. Well, what makes Bitcoin so much easier is that you don't need anyone's permission. You can go buy Bitcoin, store it in a wallet, and it's yours. Another great thing about Bitcoin is that it's borderless. And so what I mean by that is that I can send money without government's permission, without the Fed's permission, without the IRS or anyone's permission. I can send this money, real money, not currency, just money. And again, it's a store of value or it's an asset. We can play with the terms later. But for now, we'll take this asset and I can send it over to Australia, China, Vietnam. I can send it anywhere within 10 minutes. It's there and they have payment. And for a small fee and more secure, and I don't need anyone's permission. Again, it's a permissionless system. I don't need to go to my banker and say, hey, I'm going to send Bitcoin over here. I don't need their permission. So what this is doing is not only giving you sovereignty over your finance, it begins to give you sovereignty over your own free will. So the education that I'm presenting is going to get you out of the slave mentality that we've been put into. And again, there's no fault or blame. It's just we all got to start somewhere. So eventually we want to get out of that system and become our own ruler of our own nation, which is sovereignty. And I want to rule. I don't need the medical world to tell me what's best for me. I don't need the religions to tell me what's best for my soul. I don't need a financial broker who they themselves they're losing 50% a year or more, who don't understand Bitcoin. I don't need any one of those permissions to do what I want to do about my own sovereign nation, if that makes sense. Anywho, I think that's enough for today. We can get into other terminologies, but hopefully we can make the argument that your money or your currency that's backed by nothing, no gold or anything, they can print as much as they want. That keeps devaluing your dollar every year, and now the trillions that they're printing makes the value of your dollar even more, and again, it inflates that bubble, and it will burst, and it's about to burst. The stock market's about to crash. People are going to get panicked. They're going to start going to the supermarkets and clearing the shelves out, and basically hoarding and storing all this stuff, which then supply and demand kicks in, and then there's more demand for food, so then the prices go up even more. So you can choose to keep your financial wealth and health in a system that's losing value, and it's at its end. No fiat currency has lasted more than 240 years or 300 years. And they burst the bubble and they start over with a new currency and the Fed wallet, and the central bank digital currency is coming out, which they'll get rid of the dollars because they need to reset everything, and they're going to put you on a digital system, and you need their permission to do everything. But with Bitcoin, I don't need any one of theirs permission, and they cannot mute me because, of course, we can go to the extreme. They can take me off this planet. They can put me in a black site. We're not talking that. That's not a conversation for another time. For now, in simple terms, I don't need anyone's permission to spend my currency or my money, cryptocurrency, the way I want to. So I want to put it into something that's gaining 200%. So just imagine if you had $1,000 and it went up 200% next year. Would you be more happy with that, or less, or more happy keeping it into something that's losing 30% per year? So let that be your thought. The Bitcoin Standard is a great book to read for beginners. It basically dictates or says what the difference between a fiat system is and why Bitcoin is so much more better. And basically the easy way to look at Bitcoin is just Internet 3.0. We went through early Internet, and emails, and how slow and clunky that was in the 90s, and then from 2000 to 2008. We had Internet 2.0, and when we had our last crash, which was a design crash to reset the market, they're doing the same thing again. But now we need the upgrade of the technology, which is now Internet 3.0, which is the same. It just transmits information. Bitcoin is just information. It's a valuable information, if you will. And so to easily transfer and transmit my information, i.e. Bitcoin, over to someone else is faster, more secure, and more reliable than central banks and the central systems that are just here to continually extort and take your money from you. So with that being said, not to be doom and gloom, I want y'all to do your homework. If you want to become your own sovereign financial nation, then you need to do the work. You need to hustle. You need to put in hours and